Welcome back. Let's get right to our Powerhouse Roundtable. Boy, we've got a good one for you today. Ed Pozzoli is president of the Trepp Scott Law Firm. Can we show Mr. Pozzoli? There he is. He's an active voice in the Republican Party, both in South Florida and in Washington.
Andrea Robinson is a veteran journalist, editor, and reporter with the Miami Times and formerly with the Miami Herald.
Marlon Hill, an attorney with the Hamilton, Miller, and Rothesell firm, past president, Caribbean Bar Association, radio talk show host, civic activist, man of many parts.
Where are those hats today? Welcome.
Marlon, this ruling on Stand Your Ground by Judge Hirsch, what do you think?
Well, we'll see. I think the District Court of Appeals over there by FIU, we took our kids over there to see them. Chief Judge Suarez will appoint 3 to review the decision, whether or not the legislature should be writing this law or whether or not the Supreme Court should be writing this law. And that's really what it's all about, even though the gun rights advocates will fight over this issue.
So interesting that it's in the court now as a process story when it really is, it began as a lobbying story and a statutory story. Andrea Robinson, there is a burden of proof question here. What's your take on who has the burden of proof? Who should?
Of course, in any case, prosecutors should have the burden of proof. But when it comes to stand your ground, the way this law was written, I think that the defense really, if this is what you want to say, you should be able to prove why you should go to trial and be able to use this. Because we are in a society now where guns are prevalent. People are angry, and anybody will say, well, I was in fear of my life.
The 2 guys who are having a gunfight at the Pork and Beans Project in Liberty City 10 years ago, when Sherdavia Jenkins died, they both claimed Stand Your Ground. I mean, these are drug dealers, and this little 10-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl gets shot to death, and these gangbangers are claiming, oh, I was just protecting myself.
But again, that still speaks to what I mean. I think that with all these guns, honestly, stand your ground with guns, I don't buy it. I personally don't. In this case, that becomes, when Sherdavia is killed, that becomes a whole nother issue. So anything that's going to protect people who are irresponsible with guns, I don't think they need another layer of protection. I don't.
You know what, that's an interesting example, and I think Stand Your Ground does not apply when you are committing a crime.
I don't think it's applicable. Yeah. I don't think it's applicable then, but people are using this, so you have I don't know if he's going to do it, but in Pennsylvania, the other week, this new graduate was driving, and some guy, they get into this road race thing. He pulls out a gun and just shoots her. Now, is he going to say, I was standing my ground? That's what's been happening lately.
Ed, what's your take on this?
Look, the idea here was to shift the burden of proof. That's what the new law did. It shifted the burden of proof to from a defendant who was trying to claim Stand Your Ground to the prosecution that, once the claim was made, that there was an absence of facts around that. And what troubled me more was the standard of clear and convincing evidence. That's a whole different thing. I mean, you had guests on before about what that burden means. That is a near impossible burden, especially at a pre-trial. Yeah, it's a tough burden.
You know what we didn't talk about was all of this extra workload now on prosecutors. Yes. I mean, prosecutors are not they're publicly paid public servants who are, the ones I know are already have a caseload that would boggle any lawyer's mind, but this really presents another extra workload for them.
Yeah, they're under-resourced already, you know, so I definitely think that this is probably going to go to the Supreme Court because I think they need to just resolve this issue once and for all.
That's where it's going to probably wind up. All right, Ed Pozzoli, let me ask you to get us started here on the President's Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. The President, Trump, has said for a long time that 2 to 3 million people who were illegal aliens in this country voted in the November election, November of 16. And he has promised to appoint a commission. Now the commission has been appointed, and Secretary of State Ken Detzner of Florida has said, okay, we'll give this commission the information that's already a matter of public record. Was that the reasonable thing to do?
It was, because the Secretary of State he's bound by the law in Florida as to what he can provide. No matter, I mean, we've heard this cry sometimes from the media as an example. We want to see everything, but there are some boundaries as far as privacy issues about what can be shown. So as an example, you don't give addresses out to judges, where judges live, some of the law enforcement officers, some of those things. Yeah. So he is bound by Florida law as to what he can and can't provide. And so regardless of the request from the federal government, he still has to comply with his charge.
But Pauls, what really bothers me though is that we have an election commission, voter fraud commission, and our president can't even admit that we've had issues with meddling with our democracy. Right? It just seems a little bit ironic that we can't have that commission, and he can't admit in Hamburg.
I think he's admitted. Look, I think he's admitted that there were some issues. The question is, what were they? There was no voting count issues or any of that stuff. But let's understand this. Look, I had experience in the 2000 recount, and we saw abuses inside of that process, and those abuses have continued. The Florida legislature, made a big stand about how they were going to fund and how local governments got to count votes. Remember, we have 67 counties with different counting systems and everything, but those chads were a real problem, and people were abused. Look, people were abusive. Here's the idea. Here's the abuse.
What abuse?
Here's the abuse. The abuse is that your vote should count as much as mine. One person, one vote. We live by that standard. That's a real important standard.
Of course.
When you have people who are otherwise ineligible to vote voting, that means it dilutes your vote and mine.
But there was really no evidence of that.
Yeah, where is the
There's
evidence
actually,
of that?
no, with all due respect, there was evidence of that. I've
What?
seen the evidence, people voting twice in 2 different states, as an example.
Where?
Still waiting for it.
In 2012, Governor Rick Scott ordered a review of all voter rolls in the state of Florida, and in the process, hundreds of qualified voters were thrown off the rolls. In the end, out of what, 11.5 million voters at that time, 85 were determined not to be eligible to vote.
You have a right to vote, and that should be protected. Your right and my right must be protected. However, that value of that vote also must be protected. So you cannot have people who are otherwise ineligible to vote, whether they're not citizens of the United States or for whatever other reason they're
live
ineligible.
in New York, and they also vote here.
Right.
All right, everybody, hold your thoughts. We got to take a break here. We'll be right back.
tuned.
Hold on. Live in our studio this Sunday morning, a very lively roundtable. And ladies and gentlemen, let's move on, if we can, to a very, I think, positive development. Ed Pizzoli in Caracas yesterday, Leopoldo Lopez, a mayor of a Caracas suburb, but the opposite political leader of the opposition, has been in jail on trumped-up charges for more than 3 years. Finally, he was allowed to go home under house arrest. What do you think this means?
I'm hoping it means a change for the good. I mean, political opposition, as much as we like to argue and tangle it up, and you and I especially, right? I enjoy it. No, I enjoy it because it ultimately moves our country, in a manner of speaking, in the right direction, where everybody has a voice. There, for so long, under that socialist yoke of totalitarianism, they have basically put him in jail and silenced the opposition, and now he's out. The reason why they let him out, according to them, was because he had health reasons, although he looked mighty fine to me.
Yeah, the video we showed out of Caracas last night, he looked very healthy, standing on the roof of his house.
I think that we've moved past the tipping point in Venezuela. I think that even with the Caribbean region not supporting the recent sanctions, and the Pope is trying to get involved, Venezuela has really gone past a point where they really, both the opposition and the government, needs to get to the table to resolve some of these political issues that they have.
You know what I can't help but think, and call this just people who are veterans of Cuba coverage, who know that a government will do things for the optics of it when the pressure gets too much. Might this be one of those times?
And that's what I think this is. It's PR for Maduro. I mean, I don't know that it will work, but he has to hang on something.
I mean, great for Lopez and his family. Yes.
Well, for Lopez and his family,
and
but
his
for the
followers.
others, but also for the others. Hey, we let him go, even though he has these health issues. we're letting him out.
It's not going to quiet the
What is-
opposition.
Well,
it's going
but-
to raise the thermometer.
Will there
It's not
be
going to
practical
quiet it,
change?
and it's not going to feed anybody who's starving, and it's not going to
No,
provide
it's
diapers
not.
on shelves for babies, and it's not going to provide
And
milk
the
to children.
inflation is not going to
not
gonna
go
happen.
down. No, no.
But there is a vote coming up in which
Well-
people will participate. However much their votes will count, there will be a
Well, but what
a
is not
movement
coming up
there.
is a presidential election, which is what the opposition has called for, and Maduro has not yet called that. So we'll
When
see.
you have an all-powerful government. So for those of us who wish a bigger government here, we should look down to Venezuela because there is
Oh, there's
there's
no analogy.
there is.
There's
No,
There is.
analogy.
no.
You cannot have abuses in government either way, whether it's here or in
Well,
Venezuela
of course
or in
you can't
Cuba.
have abuses, but I don't think the government of the United States, state of Florida, is
If you
analogous to
ask-
what they've got going
if
in
you ask
Venezuela.
Cubans, when Castro came aboard, whether they believed that that would happen, and then we'd be sitting here 50 years later with such a terrible state in that country, I would make you a bet that they'd all say, I could never imagine that have happened then. So be careful what you wish for. That's why it's important that we protect our civil liberties here.
All right, let's move on to
Speaking of civil
another
liberties.
civil liberties. Well, I want to raise the subject of medical marijuana because John Morgan, the personal injury lawyer from Orlando this week, went to court and he is suing the state of Florida and the legislature for not saying that medical marijuana can be smokable. And Andrea, I mean, for goodness sake, when people, 71% of the voters
Exactly.
said,
The people
we
have
want,
said this is
you know,
what we
make it
want. So
legal.
why is the legislature meddling in this, making changes that don't need to be made? We said what we wanted, or the voters said what they wanted. So why even go there?
They're playing with fire. In fact, they're playing with smoke. Listen, the fact is that you know the delivery methods of medical marijuana. Those people who suffer from debilitating diseases, we're all healthy here. Folks need the options for their own treatment. Smoking isn't not impacting a delivery method. You know, it's one of the best delivery methods. In fact,
one of the fastest,
and
yeah.
John Morgan is going to win this. They're picking a bad fight with a person right now in terms of potentially having something on the general election ballot. So they need to leave this one alone.
And
because
look-
He's
gonna
going to
this
win,
lawsuit.
isn't he? I mean, Ed, I think Mr. Morgan
He
probably
probably has a good suit.
Has a
We'll
good
see.
case, doesn't he?
Probably has a good suit, and I think that but it's interesting. Earlier in the earlier segment, you're talking about opioid abuse, and now we're talking about medical marijuana, and the legislature is taking it slow about how they open up medical marijuana to those not, for those in need. That becomes very frustrating. I know several people who have children who desperately need, the oil of a medical marijuana, and they have to go to different places to get it. That is a shame, and we need to address that.
And again, the
But it
policymakers,
still needs
they're
to go
meddling.
slow because think about what the issue is with opioids. I just balanced that out for purpose of the argument.
I'm glad we're having a public health discussion with regards to everything that impacts each other, because this is right in the middle of the debate, whether we have the right funding for prevention and helping people to find the treatment that they need.
But this is really, I mean, on that, the 75 words in that constitutional amendment that went on the ballot, that 70-something
Pretty
percent
clear.
of the people,
It's very
it
clear.
had nothing to say a delivery method. It was, I think John Morgan has a really good point in saying people assumed that it was all delivery methods and you can't take back one of them.
But like most constitutional amendments, there's a lot left to be filled
Of
in, and the
course.
job of
Okay.
filling that in
Of course.
is the state legislature.
Right.
Well, that's
and
one
the
area they didn't have to
legislature
fill.
doesn't like voters telling them what should be and what should not be in the Constitution. We all know that. Well, thank you all for coming in. A great roundtable discussion.
As always,
Still to come, my personal perspective about crimes involving, yes, cruelty to animals.